And Ruth said to Naomi, "Do not bid me to leave you. Do not force me to go home. Where you go, I'll go. Where you lodge, I'll lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I'll die, and there will I be buried. So help me, God, if even death separates us." Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Voices of Faith and Grace. Today, I'll share a story about the grace of God from the Lineage of Grace series, a book series written by Francine Rivers about women in the lineage of Christ. And today, we'll talk about the unshaken Ruth. The story of Ruth in the Bible is a great example of grace on many accounts and levels. First, we see the grace of Ruth and her devotion to Naomi, her mother-in-law. After everything, after she has lost her children, she has lost her husband, and she wants to return to Bethlehem, she told her daughters-in-law, "Please go back to your home. There is nothing more I can offer you. Even if I was married today and I was able to bear sons, you would not wait for them to grow up so that they can marry you and, give you children. So please go back to your parents." But Ruth said, "No, I'm now of your kind." When you read the story as written by Francine, it's very insightful the way she writes it, because you see that there was something about Ruth that desired to know the God of Naomi, the God she used to talk about, the God that she carried in her. It was very beautiful, like the way Francine writes it. It's very beautiful. So I pray that, as we share, you go back and read these stories, because you'll see a lot in there. And then on another level, we see the grace of God's provision and protection to Naomi when she returns to Bethlehem. The Bible shows us that even as Naomi was returning to Bethlehem, she was filled with bitterness. She was looking at herself like a woman who had lost so much, but she didn't know what was awaiting for her, because God, even through the trials, His grace is still sufficient. He says the sufficiencies of Him. And then we see the grace of God through Boaz, as a kinsman redeemer. Not only did he marry Ruth, but even before, there was a certain protection he provided Ruth with as she was gleaning the fields. And then finally, which is the most important highlight of this video really, is the grace of God that grafted a Moabite woman, a Gentile, into the lineage of the greatest king, David, and ultimately Christ. And Romans 11:17-32 tells us that we were grafted in, Gentiles were grafted into these very promises of Abraham. We were grafted into this very promise that now we are proudly children of God, and we have, the boldness to say that we're children of God, and we stand on these very promises. So it is that grace that has invited us. My father always says that grace will not only avail the door for you, but it will enable you to knock. So the grace of God carries us, it enables us. And we see it so much in the story of Ruth, because she was a Gentile, she was an outcast. Even her obedience, that place of obedience, there is nothing like obeying, that will cause, that submission, when you obey and, submit to God, there is something. She was serving a person that knew God. She was serving a woman who knew God. And I think it's from that place of obedience that God had to respond, that God had to really bring her into this very story and make her even like part of the story of the Christ, the lineage of the Christ. It is such a powerful thing when you think about it, her yielding to a future and that was uncertain. She was going into a land where she wasn't sure they were going to accept her. They were Jews, she was a Gentile. And, she didn't think about all that. She didn't for 1 minute doubt that, that's what she wanted. She really wanted to go with Naomi. And we see that when she gets there, she's later accepted. And not only was she accepted, but she was grafted in. And yeah, she was grafted in. And now we read about her. We talk about her. And God wants to do for you, even in your life, that grace is sufficient to get you out of any trouble, to lead you, to guide you. His grace is sufficient for all of us. We learn from the story of Ruth, obedience. By Ruth obeying Naomi, she was obeying God. So we learn obedience, and God rewards obedient men. God responds to faithfulness, and He blessed her. but also we learn the grace of God, His unmerited grace and favor that never fails, that regardless of whatever trouble you're in, and you could be angry, you could be frustrated, you could be victimized, but God sees you. That and really the message is that you stop looking at yourself in that situation, in that thing, as a victimized man, and look at yourself like you are with help. You're not standing without help, you're standing with God, and He'll get you through whatever trouble it is. He'll help you, just like He helped Naomi when all hope is lost. I don't know what's worse than losing your husband and losing your children, and God still shows her that I'll not only add someone to you that will cling to you like as though she's from your womb, but I'll use her to provide even for you, that you'll never lack. So God is faithful, God is gracious, and that's what we see from this story. See you next time. Love you. Bye bye.